I've always wanted to make this kind of video. In this discussion, we will be analyzing, comparing, and contrasting Casey Mittelstadt and ELIAS Pettersson. These two are arguably the two best prospects within NHL club systems today, and for the most part, there's been sort of a low-key debate on whether or not one of them is really better than the other. So let's start things off with some background information. Both of these guys were taken in the first round of the 2017 NHL entry draft. Mittelstadt was 3 picks ahead of ELIAS Pettersson. Pettersson was 5th, Mittelstadt was 8th. Pettersson went over to Vancouver from the Timrå IK, and Mittelstadt went over to the Buffalo Sabres from a USHS-dominated season wherein he finished with the US Hockey League. This is an interesting story, because, for the most part, ELIAS Pettersson is a guy who spent the majority of his time climbing up the ranks. He got himself drafted right out of the Allsvenskan, which was the second-tier league of professional hockey in Sweden. This was the second highest level. Meanwhile, Casey Mittelstadt, on the other hand, played the majority of his season in the high school leagues. He wanted to spend some time with his buddies and finish things up over there, wherein he grabbed himself 64 points in 25 games in the high school leagues, which, mind you, is very good, but it's just that the league itself wasn't necessarily all that great in comparison. He did finish the season off, however, in the USHL, grabbed himself 30 points in 24 games played, and performing off of that season, he grabbed himself a spot in the first round of the entry draft. But that was last season. I think there's a reason the Vancouver Canucks took Pettersson over Mittelstadt, and we will be discussing a little bit of this as we go forward with these discussions. If we go through their frames, ELIAS Pettersson is a guy who's been criticized a ton in the past for not being big. He's 6'2", yes, that's pretty tall, but he's listed as 165 pounds, which is incredibly slim for a guy who might be able to make the NHL next season. Casey Mittelstadt, on the other hand, he's an inch shorter, but he's a full 36 pounds heavier. Mittelstadt is 6'1", 201 pounds. He's a guy who definitely has the NHL body, and he's a guy who possesses a body that nobody will be questioning. Pettersson, right when he comes out of the gate, people will be like, yeah, no, is he too light? Is he too light? Is he going to be able to do it? And this is why Casey Mittelstadt has the apparent edge just in the framework. If we go over to other things, let's take a look at their production this most previous 17-18 season. Mittelstadt spent the majority of his year with the University of Minnesota. He was over there with the Gophers, and in 34 games played in the NCAA, he netted himself 11 goals, 19 assists, and 30 total points. That was good enough for second on his team in points behind Rem Pitlick, who bested him out by 1. Pitlick and Mittelstadt were a really good pair on that first line, and overall, it was a solid, effective line. The Gophers, however, didn't necessarily go too far, and that's where things were capped off. Mittelstadt got 30 points in his freshman year, and it was an impressive freshman year nonetheless. ELIAS Pettersson, however, he broke a few records in the SHL, let's just say. He's playing in a men's league too. In fact, it's the highest men's league in professional hockey in Sweden. He's totally in a class of his own when it comes to production. Just purely production. We're not talking about skills, shot, or whatever. Production in their own leagues of the most previous season. Pettersson broke records. 56 points, 44 games played, first in points and points per game, and second in goals in the SHL. As a guy who came in and broke all the Swedish rookie scoring records, he definitely deserves the praise that he's garnered today. But that's just one aspect. We just talked about production, because if we talk about production in their own seasons, Pettersson clearly has the edge. But if we go over to probably the only span of time where they were actually playing against each other, Casey Mittelstadt comes away with the victory. What I'm talking about here is the World Junior Championships. Now, in the World Juniors, ELIAS Pettersson grabbed himself 7 points in 7 games played, good enough for a 1 point per game. Mittelstadt, on the other hand, 11 points in 7 games played, tied for the tournament's lead. He also grabbed himself the MVP and was named to the All-Star team. It's very funny because S7 on Twitter was talking about this before the World Juniors even started, and he said that he was excited to see Mittelstadt in this environment, because the World Juniors was basically designed for Casey Mittelstadt, and he indeed did flourish with that amazing USA team. Casey Mittelstadt had arguably one of the most impressive and visually entertaining World Junior performances we've seen ever. So many highlight reel goals, dipsy doodles through other players, dangling through guys, setting up other teammates. Mittelstadt was an absolute beast, and this was a tournament that showcased his true handles, because Mittelstadt has Pettersson beat in terms of handles. Pettersson's got some handles too, but in terms of puck skills, it is clear Casey Mittelstadt is the one who's able to have the poise and the execution, along with the confidence to be able to do what he's able to do. He didn't showcase a lot of that playing for the college leagues because, well, he couldn't really do that. The college guys are pretty tough on him. But in the World Juniors, Mittelstadt shined. At the same time, we can't go talking about all puck skills while ignoring shot. And if we want to talk about shot, both of these guys got a really good, powerful, and effective shot. Mittelstadt is a guy who's able to get things off really quickly. His snapshot is one of the best I've seen over the past year, and it's really interesting to see where he places his shots because he's a good shooter, generally speaking. But ELIAS Pettersson, on the other hand, he's an absolute rocket. And it's so scary to me that when I think of Pettersson, I think of a playmaker. I think of a guy who's able to set up his other teammates. But really, Pettersson's shot, showcased in the SHL this past season, definitely could challenge Brock Besser for best shot on the team if Pettersson makes the team next year. And that is really saying something. Pettersson has a better shot than Mittelstadt. I think my opinion in this is very clear to understand because Pettersson, the majority of his really high-quality slapshot one-timers were all from the Ovechkin spot on the power play. It's just that, as a left-handed player, Pettersson was on the right hand of the ice instead of the left hand like Ovechkin usually is. But Pettersson, when he gets angry, when he really wants to hit that puck, he can. He winds up, one knee slaps it down, and usually goes short side. And he scored so many goals like that. I think Pettersson, his wrist shot, definitely is also better than Mittelstadt's as well, because Pettersson just has so many highlights where he caresses the puck, winds it up, and just releases. He can roof it, and he can snipe it wherever he wants. Mittelstadt, I believe he might have the better snapshot, but for slapshot and normal wrist shot, I think Pettersson has him beat. I also wanted to talk about work ethic, and this isn't really talking about personalities or how they're like with their teammates, just work ethic on the ice. How powerful they're able to drive. And witnessing both of these players in the past season, I don't know if it's just because Mittelstadt was playing in the college environment, but I believe that a lot of his highlights were just very good, solid highlights indeed, but there weren't any plays that stood out to me like, oh my goodness, he really tried hard in that one there. Whereas for Pettersson, he's got a few assists and goals and attempted passes where he's going really fast, full speed ahead, and he falls down and he still tries to do something with the puck while he's falling down. He either sets somebody up for a goal or he shoots it himself. Pettersson just has such a strong drive whenever he plays the game that I have to give him the edge in this one too. And it feels bad, but like, I don't know, dude. It's just, I feel that Pettersson is a guy who's able to really just push it. Whereas Mittelstadt, I haven't seen that much of that drive from. Maybe I'm wrong. You guys can probably call me out on this and tell me where I'm wrong on this, but other than that, everything else I believe is the same. The instincts and the playmaking, I think that these guys share a good, high-quality amount of these both. And I think that their instincts are both extraordinarily well-toned, and if you watch some of these guys' playmaking abilities, they're able to find players in incredulous situations, and it's so interesting to see the passes that they make that usually end up in assists, and both of these guys are just so good at playmaking and instincts that This is why I define Pettersson as a playmaker, and Mittelstadt, on the other hand, he's a guy who could still be defined as a sniper, but I'm gonna say he's probably a playmaker as well. Mittelstadt made the NHL too, and he was playmaking over there as well. 1 goal and 4 assists in 6 games played at the end of the 17-18 season is good enough to put him in a position where everybody is excited for Casey Mittelstadt. In fact, the World Juniors really did hype up his draft stock. In terms of the Hockey News top 100 prospects in an NHL organization today, they put Casey Mittelstadt as number 1, and Pettersson was down there at number 2. But if you take a look at everything else, if you look at the PNHLE, this is the thing that I talked about a long time ago, the projected NHL equivalencies. It's been noted that an NHL player, a solid NHL player, a guaranteed NHL player, has a PNHL ranking of above 50. ELIAS Pettersson grabbed 84 PNHLE points, which is 2 behind Jack Eichel before he made the NHL. And if you want to look at Mittelstadt, he's all the way down there at 90th. He had 37 PNHLE points. ELIAS Pettersson was first. And this is kind of weird to look at, because the PNHLE incorporates the numbers, their stats, their age and everything, the league they play in, and Pettersson grabbed the most points out of NHL prospects today by a long shot. And Mittelstadt was down there at 37, at 90th. So, overall, I don't know who's the better player. I don't want to be that guy who, like, oh, why did you make me watch this whole video just for you to say you don't know? But, like, these two could really challenge for the Calder next season. And that's incredible. And overall, both of these guys are just so extraordinarily talented. It's just that I think for the shot, Pettersson's got the shot, the work ethic and everything, but Mittelstadt's got the hands. It's so interesting to look at. Very interesting. And I know this was a really long video, but I just wanted to talk about both of these guys because they're both players that I could see becoming great NHL stars. However, the PNHLE doesn't say that Mittelstadt's going to become a guaranteed star, but I am. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Comment down below what you guys think. Twitter, +, // gaming, and bye.